We're going to be driving that Porsche GT4 Club Sport in just a bit, and you guys are going to be driving that car starting tomorrow with the August update. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the August edition of Forza Monthly. My name is Brian Eckberg. So glad to be here hosting the show because we've got a great one here. It's going to be a good show. I can't wait to get into all of it because we've got a lot of stuff going on throughout the Forza universe, and we're going to touch on all of that today. This is actually the first of 2 shows in August, Forza Monthly shows. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means in just a bit, but first let's give you an idea of what we've got going on here on the August 5th edition of Forza Monthly. Let's bring up the calendar. Starts with Forza Motorsport 7, the August 2019 update, the final update for Forza Motorsport 7 is here. We've got Chris Sasaki and Matt Santel to bring you all the news, take you through all of the update, including that GT4 Club Sport. You might remember Playground had their Series 12 update last week for Forza Horizon 4. We're going to be looking back at that as well, including the stream from Playground. Elliot Lyons, you might remember that name. He's back, and he's going to be talking Forza Racing Championship, getting you up to date with the latest news in the world of the ForzaRC. Of course, we've got a community Q&A. And a look ahead to that August 27th edition of Forza Monthly. So a great show today, a lot to get to. Let's jump right in with Forza Motorsport 7. I'm really happy to be joined once again by Chris Sasaki, Creative Director with Forza. Chris, welcome back. Happy August.
Happy August to you too, sir. I've been great. I've been fantastic. It's been a whirlwind of a month this last July. The team has been hard at work. We're actually officially on sprint number 2 for the next game.
What does that mean? What's a sprint?
A sprint is basically how we organize our development efforts. So we have this kind of cadence or a heartbeat of development where we kind of do a little bit of planning, we do some development, and then we kind of look back on, and we actually right now we're at a 2-week sprint cadence, which means every 2 weeks we do some planning, we do some development, we finish it up, look back, see how far we've come. Talk about where we need to invest more, where we need to cut bait, and it's just kind of that quick iteration cycle. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're just starting it out, and everyone's super excited.
Sprint number 2.
Sprint number 2. Yeah. So I'm repping the Hot Boys today.
Okay. Nice. Wow. Somebody's head just exploded.
I know, right? So anyway, just shout out to all the streamers out there in the community. We love you all. But we've had so much going on in the studio in this last month, and I just want to shout out to everyone at Turn 10. And some of the hard work that's gone on, sort of unnoticed. I just thought to call it out real quickly. We have all of these hardcore foundation teams that kind of build our tech foundation. That's not just rendering and that sort of thing, but there's tools and automation, but other things that are so critical to actually being able to make a game, which are things like our pipeline and our process for making builds. So a shout out to everyone who's working hard in those trenches.
Laying the foundation.
It's something we never really talk about because we're always talking about features.
Right.
And that's the really cool stuff. But these guys are allowing us to do these features. These guys are allowing us to build the game. So they're kind of the unsung heroes of Turn 10, and so shout out to those guys.
Shout out to those guys for sure.
Yeah.
In addition to Chris Sasaki, welcome Chris, and we've got Matt Santel here for the first time on Forza Monthly. Welcome.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here finally. I've watched the show many times, and now I'm on it.
You're here. Now,
what's going on?
If you might remember that Matt was on on Forza Friday a couple weeks ago. That's sort of your introduction to the community.
That was a great time. That was good fun.
If you missed the show, who are you? What do you do with Forza?
I'm like a dinosaur in the world of like online video games and racing and development.
Survived a meteor.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I started out like way back in the mid-'90s, my video game career at Papyrus, which was mid-'90s were kind of like the birth of simulation-based racing with like detailed physics models that underlie what powers the game, like what we have in Forza now. And it was kind of the early days of that, with online, with all these things, and I just have a deep passion for that stuff that continues to this day, and on both the development and the player side. I spend way too much time racing online. So.
You come from that background. You love sim racing. You got a rig at home. This is what you do, right?
Yeah. I've spent way too much money and time on it. My wife could attest to that.
I think a lot of people in the audience could probably attest to that and relate to that as well. Well, welcome, Matt. We're going to be talking to Chris and Matt about the August 2019 update, including some updates with Forza Race Regulations. But I've got a controller in hand, and we're going to start with the Porsche. Now, this this has a long name. Let me make sure I get this right because we're going to Road Atlanta. It's the 2019 Porsche number 4 Porsche Motorsport 718 Cayman GT4 Club Sport, and we're taking it out where else? But Chris, we're going to Road Atlanta.
Road
This
Atlanta.
just makes sense, right?
Porsche Experience Center
This
in
car,
Atlanta.
I was saying before the show began, I love this car. This is a free car. Everybody's going to be able to drive this car. When you get the update tomorrow, just like the Spotlight cars in the past, this car will be downloaded to your garage, and you'll be able to check this out. I love this car, even though I'm not doing the greatest job here.
You get in a beautiful car, and turn one, you just wreck that. That's
yeah,
great.
well, the paint's all
Thanks.
messed up on this thing
That's right.
anyway.
It's an awesome paint scheme.
No, it's awesome, yeah.
That must be default. Right?
It is default, absolutely, yeah.
Fantastic.
It's so good, and this car is just super drivable right out of the bat.
I love my personal kind of love of cars in terms of configuration is mid-engine, rear wheel drive.
Yep.
And I own a 914.6. That's kind of like,
Oh, dude, I didn't.
yeah.
Wow, love it.
So
One of my favorites.
I've always thought that the Boxster Cayman 718 is kind of the spiritual successor of, even though I know it's like the black sheep of the whole Porsche lineage.
Right.
But I like to think that this is kind of along those lines. It is kind of the configuration I go to. So this is actually not only the configuration I like, but this in particular, the motor behind this thing.
Yeah.
It is fantastic in all of its six glory. This actually, I think, is probably one of the best sounding sixes we have in the game. And if you don't like the sound of sixes, I think this may change your mind. This is an incredible sounding car.
This is a single-seater race car. I mean, this car competes in Forza 7. This car competes in the Forza GT division,
Oh,
which
yeah.
I know. Oh, sorry. I'm looking over at Chris and not paying attention to the road. But yeah, this is a Forza GT car. I know there's a lot of love for the Forza GT division. A lot of people spend their time in these type of cars.
It's kind of the heart of Forza, I think.
Yep.
Forza GT.
Around just over, 540 horsepower, I think. 2,700 pounds. It's light, lithe. It's not the fastest in a straight line.
No.
Right? But this thing excels under braking. Like you can just see the closing here on the Hoonigan.
Yeah, it handles like a dream. I've actually spoken to a number of people who have driven this in comparison to a number of other modern Porsche kind of track cars. And this one just like you said, it may not have the straightest straight line speed or the fastest straight line speed, but
Yep.
it handles the best of all of them.
And I think Porsche must have thought a lot of this car because it gave it that 718 moniker,
yeah.
you know. That's harkens back to the sort of 50s and 60s racing glory days of
Oh yeah.
of Porsches. So they must think pretty highly of this car, and I think you guys will too once you've got it, starting with the August update
Yes.
for Forza Motorsport 7. We're already in August, guys. Final lap here. I actually wanted to show a feature that I was kind of being a little bit coy about, but if you go into pause, this is new for the August update as well. I'm going to go into options into HUD, and you guys have been asking for a long time, show intervals between cars as time, not distance.
No.
It's happening, Matt. I was hoping you'd be aware of this now, but it's happening.
It's happening.
It's happening. So go back to resume, and if you look in the mini leaderboard there on the left-hand side, you can see the times are now noted in seconds as opposed to distance. Chris, they've been asking for this
That's
for a
awesome.
while. This is awesome.
It is. It's awesome. It's super awesome. I'm still amazed that it took us this long to get it in, but truthfully, we've wanted this in for a long time. I know the community's wanted this in for a long time. But to quote Egg Shen, because this is truly what I think about this. How did you get there? How did you get here? Wasn't easy. This actually, like Matt can talk a little.
It isn't trivial to implement that, but it also isn't. You're not discovering fire either. So
No.
So it's there, and it's great to finally have that because that's what you care about as a driver. Or as a spectator, broadcaster, it doesn't really help you a lot to know the distance because that's just constantly. Cars are constantly accordioning as you go around the track and the distance.
Fast and slow sections.
But the time, of course, is fairly constant, and that's what you're seeing here.
So I should point out that this is actually the default. As of August, this will be the default for players. If you have the mini leaderboard up, you will have the time interval will be in time and not distance. Although if you still want to use distance, you can. You just got to go to the HUD options and change that. So it's still there if you want it, but the new default will be time. So yeah, great look at the Porsche. That time interval is something that people have been really asking for. Glad to have it here in August.
And one of the things I wanted to comment with Matt here, he was one of the ones really pushing for this internally to happen, and trying to line all the stars to actually make sure that we did land it for this last update was a large part of
It's a big group effort with the team
for sure,
to realize that. I mean, there's a lot going on, in terms of work across the title and what we're starting to work on for next as well. And just trying to fit that in was a little challenging, but we got it. We got it.
I think this is going to have some big impacts for players who love to run their own race series and stream. They're going to be able to talk about car position different, like in the Forza RC. We're going to be able to use seconds between cars. That's just, it's one of those things that seems like a small change, but boy, it has big impacts across the title.
Yeah,
we're getting there.
so.
All right. So good news there. Porsche GT4 Club Sport's coming. Timed intervals are now in. But I think what everyone's curious about is Forza Race Regulations. Guys, we've been working on Forza Race Regulations. Well, we've been talking about it for more than a year, but the team has been working on it that entire time, have introduced a lot of great features over the preceding months, and it sort of culminates here with the final update for Forza Motorsport 7. Matt, I know this is near and dear to your heart. This is where you've been spending your time for the past couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, I just joined Turn 10 a few months ago, a little around 3 months ago, and kind of started with the collisions work and trying to tune that in the best way that we could for its release in July. Feel pretty good about that. That's a super hard problem. I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But the last piece really was to make the system work was disqualification, to have some real consequence for your actions, and can't drive around now with like a couple of minutes of penalty time and keep making people's race miserable. So yeah, we've got this rolling out in the August update today, and I think we're going to look at a video to kind of showcase it. But
why don't we do that? Why don't we bring up that footage, and then Matt, you can just talk us through what we're seeing here, because disqualifications is new. Actually, it's here.
Right. So yeah, you've already you can see a little bit of penalty time already there from something for people who've never seen that, and now we see somebody. It looks to me like trying to take out another driver intentionally, but. That adds up now to over 10 seconds, and you can see the probation message appears, which tells you you don't really have much more that you can get away with here. It's basically a warning that says you need to be more careful.
Damn.
And if you
he does it again.
If you if you keep behaving that way, you will be sent to the shadow realm. And that's what's about to happen here. You see the disqualified messages, and just within a few seconds, you're actually dropped from the lobby entirely and out to the selection of the hopper menu.
So let's break it down maybe like section by section. So first there's this probationary period. What does that mean for a player?
Yeah, it's really like a warning, right? It's a warning that says, you might be able to get away with a few more track cuts, little things that add up to quarter second, half second, but you need to be more careful if you keep, you need to try to get to the end of the race without doing anything else wrong. That's basically what it is.
And that's at the 10 second
That's at
mark.
10 seconds.
Okay.
That's right. And then you have 2 seconds of additional penalty time that you can accrue before you get the final boot.
And it doesn't matter how this penalty time accrues, right? It's just the total amount of time.
That's right. Yeah, it could be from track cutting, it could be from collisions, it's just anything that adds up to that amount of time.
I want to talk about how we arrived at 12 seconds, but first let me mention, what does it mean to be disqualified? Where are you going when you get kicked out?
Right, so you do get dropped out to where you have to select the hopper again that you want to go into, and you could select to go back into the beta hopper. If you do that, you might end up in the same session, but you probably won't. It depends on the region and the current population online that you're in for your region. The idea to drop you out is hopefully you don't go back into the same lobby, because this isn't just about trying to catch griefing and reduce that. It's also about making more fair racing. But in the event that people are griefing, it kind of gets them out of that lobby for everyone else and cleans up that situation for the people who are trying to race there. So yeah, The time of 12 seconds,
Yeah.
you know, can talk a little bit about that. It was just a lot of testing, a lot of tuning. You know, it's a balance. You want to be able to race. We want to, you know, players want to be able to race and fight for positions and not just be, you know, with the handcuffs on that they have to watch every single move. So we were testing very much against that kind of metric. But we also have to consider, you know, there could be false positives. I mean, there are still some of those in our collision checks. And it's just a lot of things to take into consideration that basically we got to that through testing. It works well for the typical sort of Forza race length, and certainly for the race lengths that's in the beta hopper.
Yeah, I was going to say it. I was wondering what was the method that you went testing? Like, were you playing the regular hoppers? Were you playing custom races?
We
private?
were mainly playing, you know, the format of the beta hopper.
What exists?
And just trying to get disqualified a lot of the time. Like some people trying to race cleanly and some trying to get disqualified. And you know, it's not too easy to get disqualified at 12 seconds. I mean, you can do it if you blow past a bunch of cars through a runoff area or something, but you know, if you just slow down in that runoff area, you won't get the penalty. So yeah, it's mainly just testing and tuning and trying to allow room to race, room to fight. But you know, at the same time, there has to be a point where, you know, it's just, you know, this is just excessive penalties.
And we should, just in the interest of clarity, that 12 seconds is across any Forza race regulation enabled hopper, whether it's private or public.
That's right.
Is that right?
That's right. And in the private hoppers, it is that same 12 seconds, but we do allow you to disable it when you set up your private race.
Right. So you'll have some options there. Using it in a private race may not work great for endurance races, but at least you have the option to turn that off.
Right.
So I know that both of you think a lot about Forza Race Regulations, so I kind of want to pose the question to both of you. Like, here we are, we're at the end of Forza Motorsport 7 development. We've come a long way with how much we've put into Forza Race Regulations, the game in general, but certainly with Forza Race Regulations. But I know you've said, Chris, many times on the show that this is just a starting point. We've taken it as far as we can with FM7, but we're still on the journey.
Yeah, so if we rewind about a year and a half ago, when we started talking about FRR and how we were thinking about this overall strategy of delivering a regulation system, you know, one of the guests that's on later today is Elliot Lyons. Actually laid a lot of the great foundation work and design work that went into the initial implementations of FRR. And since then, we've evolved kind of the focus and what we're doing kind of at an iterative CU to CU kind of state to solve some of the major issues first, right? But we've always known that this is going to be something that is, you know, years and years in the making, because it's such a huge, monumentally difficult problem to solve everything, right? I don't even know if it's possible to solve everything. We're looking at all these different ways of approaching that because it's such a huge problem set. To give you an example, you know, every single scenario is unique, right? The speed, the angle of the corner, right? The context of the track. Are there other cars around you, and what are they doing, and how did you end up in that scenario? Just that one specific thing can end up in, you know, half a dozen, hundreds of different of iterations of that one specific collision, right? At that speed, at that angle, here at this turn, right? It's.
And of course, one of the things you're trying to look at is intent.
Yes.
You know. It's not
trying to
just,
read their
it
minds.
isn't just about the events on track. You're trying to, and that's something that, of course, real world race officials and stewards they're taking into account when they make these judgments. And you know, asking a piece of software to do that, it's very much a 21st century challenge.
Yeah, that's a good point. So that's kind of where we are. We understand that this is a good state that we've got it to, where it's catching a lot of the hardcore griefing scenarios, kind of penalizing that first, figuring out a way to get us a large portion of the way to cleaner racing through these kind of mechanics. And then the next portion is just building out a lot more of the subtlety in there and taking account of a lot of other racing scenarios that we're really trying to encourage and regulate. Now, so this is what's really interesting about it to me. First of all, it's going to be years in the making to get this thing right. You know? When the next version of of our game comes out, it may not be anywhere near final, right? It may still have a long ways to go. But we know one of the cool things that we get out of it is interesting racing. And what I mean by that is you can do a lot with rules and regulations. If you look across motorsport today, one of the things that keeps it fresh for the viewers and for the racers and for the teams and everyone involved in the sport is that the rules and regulations may change a little bit year to year, right? It enforces it this way, changes the tire compounds that way, introduces certain types of qualification metrics or what have you. And they're just very different every year to year. And it dramatically impacts how the teams think about the race, how they campaign, and how they use the resources. So these are all things where actually that are huge benefits to us when we think about where we go forward and where we're going with this game. Regulations is going to be part and parcel of how we build out the world of motorsport, just because that's the rule set.
Yeah.
It is the game design of the core, right? So it's not just the stick. There's a bunch of other things that go into this, right? Like player behavior. There's the carrot side of it as well. Just not clean racing overall, but interesting racing, engaging racing, watchable racing, stuff that we actually are hugely invested in, and so FRR. And where we go is, once again, years in the making as we expose all of this and figure out great ways to do just really interesting racing going forward. So, yeah.
It feels like there's so many different aspects that FRR can manifest itself in. It starts with track limits. It becomes rules and regulations. It becomes the stick that you were talking about, but it's not necessarily that. I wonder, from your perspective, Matt, being relatively new to the team, if the scope of this has continued to change, or if you had a feeling for it from the beginning.
It was kind of in flight, but yeah, I did have a pretty good feeling around it, or sense of what the scope of it was, just from other titles and from my history of playing a lot of things online. But everyone takes a different approach, and it started with track limits, like you said. It went to penalties for violating those track limits, or having cut detection. And that's it's not as trivial as it might seem. It's pretty nuanced to figure out like how much time you gain from something, because it's time against what, what reference. And then it of course moved on to collisions, and that's the huge, horrible piece that is
the intimidating piece.
It really is like a massive, massive problem to try to solve. I mean, anyone who watches real-world racing knows that almost no one, it's almost never the case that everyone agrees with a call that is made in real-world racing. So,
and there's usually humans involved.
There are
a system like
humans.
this,
there are always humans involved, and they're usually people with many years of experience, and it's just, there's a huge amount of judgment involved. It's not as simple as 2 feet in bounds as a catch. It's a lot of judgment. So, but it's also hugely important, right, to get all of this working really well, because we can't have humans. I mean, we all want to race online, and we want to have a lot of fun and have fair races, but also competitive fun races where we can fight hard. And we can't have hundreds or thousands of real-world human adjudicators watching all of these races that are going. I mean, we all want to go home from work and hop online and spend an hour or two just having fun online races. So we need for the software to work and actually do this job. And so that's one of the reasons I'm excited to be at Turn 10, to be working on this, is that I know this is really important for the hobby that I love, and it's a really fun software design challenge as well. So, but anyway, kind of derailed there. The last piece, of course, is what we're rolling out today: disqualification, to finally add the consequences to the. I mean, obviously you had the consequence of time, but this really puts the nail in it, where you're like, okay, you got 8 seconds. Like, you really start. I mean, we've seen this in our play testing, where it really changes people's behavior, and we've heard that from the community as well.
I'd imagine, especially once you get to that 10-second probation period, you're really kind of thinking about how much you can get away with for the rest of the race.
You really clean it up then. So,
well, feels like it's a great way, Chris, to sort of wrap up development on FM7 with the fact that we have a system that feels pretty good. I mean, it's not perfect, but it feels pretty good, and we're moving on.
Yeah, well, no system is perfect.
That's right.
And that's not an excuse for us, for sure. But I think we got it to a good state. I'm happy with FRR where it is today. I would have loved to rolled it out to all the hoppers. There's reasons why we didn't do that. So this is all coming down the road, right? Where we go with FRR and it being part and parcel of what Forza Motorsport is and is not.
Yep.
And so we've obviously learned a lot here, and I'm super happy with all the progress we've made. This I think is an incredible thing. We've never done this with a motorsport franchise and moved it this far in one iteration. I just couldn't be prouder of all the work that's gone into it and how the team has fundamentally changed and how we perceive and think about racing and what are the fundamentals there that go along with that. It's just a DNA thing that we've slowly are starting to change, and this is this is a big part of our value as a franchise and as a game. So
I actually want to give a shout out to the community too, because
for
we've been
sure.
asking for feedback every month as we've done new updates, and you guys have delivered, right? A lot of the things we put into game, whether it's what penalty you get for track cutting and those kind of things, those kind of suggestions and feedback have been integral in helping inform what you guys have done.
Yeah, and in the tuning as well, like we've tried to relax some of the aspects of track cutting that were just too, penalized you too much. You just extending the exit of a corner and those sorts of things. So yeah, that's it's been really helpful.
And going back to community feedback, and one of the things that Matt has been a big proponent of, and we know the community wants this as well. One of the things that we are working on, and once again, I want to make sure that people understand we're not committing to any of the features that we're talking about in development right now, because we are developing them and things come and go. But player rating is a huge portion of how we think about managing our population and managing good racing going forward. And Matt's been he actually gave a presentation about it last week. We talked about it as a team, about where we're going there and how that's going to impact how we do matchmaking, how it impacts the entire flow of the game. It's a big deal for us, and something that is I know everyone is talking about and is the next step. And once we get the regulations to a certain point, then it's okay. This is the next step there, as a part of this whole system for better racing, cleaner racing. So just wanted to mention that, because there's just a ton of work going on right now.
Ton of work going on and a ton of work to come. That's what's exciting for me about being part of these conversations, is because we realize where we are now, and we're excited about where we're heading in the future. So more to come on all of this in the future, Forza Monthly and elsewhere. And we want you guys to be involved. We will have a feedback thread in the forums regarding feedback on the final version of Forza Race Regulations and Forza Motorsport 7. So you don't want to miss that. Give your chance to give some feedback as we continue forward with development. So Matt, Chris, great to have you here. Matt especially,
awesome.
It's great to have you here for the first time. Chris
awesome
will be back in just a little bit with our Q&A section. In the meantime, you might remember Series 12 update for Forza Horizon 4 was last week from Playground. Our friends at PG did a live stream from PGHQ and covered all of the cool stuff happening in Series 12. Let's take a look back at that stream right now.
Welcome live here from Leamington Spa. This is Playground Games Studio, and with me today we've got Torben.
Hey,
famous from Torben Tuesday, although you weren't here this week.
No, I wasn't. I'd apparently gone fishing.
Yeah, apparently so.
No, I've gone on vacation, but...
Are you sure?
Yes.
I mean, we did have quite a few.
Yes, it was vacation. People did jump to assumptions about what I was doing, but no, I was on vacation. This is allowed.
I mean, we'll just let you this once, Torben. And also with me on the sofa today is Matt, Andy, and Chris. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Roger.
Hey.
So let's just go through it season by season and talk a little bit about the cars.
A real standout starting point is the Mosler that's come back for the first time in a really long time.
It's also got the Caddy Escalade. How did you describe that, Andy? A big bruiser?
Yeah, it's a brick, isn't it? How, like, those two cars could not be more opposite ends of the spectrum in our game.
So, chatting really quickly about summer. Again, we've got a couple of returning cars.
Some kind of favourites coming back, Cherokee and that Mercedes, some nice cars to pick up there. You'll see as we go through that there's a seasonal championship for each year, so we start with 50s and we have 60s, 70s and 80s, so it's a bit of a running theme. So let's move on to autumn. So firstly, you're getting a brand new Volkswagen Carmen Gear.
Carmen Gear.
Carmen Gear.
There you go, well done.
Well pronounced.
Thank you. And of course, if you get 80%, the Crown Victoria, the car that everyone constantly talks about.
And the second of the racing through the years. What
Yeah,
have we had?
exactly. So you can get another brand new, never before seen Volkswagen, the Type 3. From completing racing through the 60s, as well as picking up the Maserati, a birdcage down there, which is like worth, you know, a couple of million, I think. So that's like a really good value car, really, really interesting, cool car that you can get. And then the other one, you know, we just chucked in a Ford Tradition as well for doing that, the BMW M6. So three absolutely
Why not?
amazing cars. We got some of our brand new Aston Martins coming up in winter.
Nice.
So that is the Aston Martin Superleggera.
Superleggera.
There you go. One.
I messed up that time.
And then into spring.
Yeah, so
and
last but very, very not least. So straight up 50%, get that Aston Martin Zagato.
and the Lotus Elise, which has been in the game for a while, but has been a little bit difficult to get.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And the first of our entirely new showcase remixes. And this one is described as supersonic versus super fast, which is of course because it's racing a supersonic jet and indeed
Really?
driving.
No way.
Yes. So this update brings kind of the final piece of the star card puzzle. Maybe you want to tell us a little about
Yeah,
about
so
what
the thing that we've added here is if you complete all the challenges, so across all of them, alongside also getting the star next to your name, because you are a true Horizon superstar if you manage that.
that is how you get the Ford Capri Forza
You get
edition.
the Ford Capri.
So we're going to move on to something else. I know you guys have been waiting to hear a little bit more about this.
Yeah, so if you have Legacy Champions, you've become a master builder, basically completed your house, unlocked the Bound Find. Now Jay's found the instructions so you can put it together.
Yes,
And, you can-
ably
yeah.
helped by Chris.
So this one is based around the early 911 turbo race car. So it's a little bit more powerful than the road going version. And it's got the same weight distribution as 911. It has that characteristic front end. So the way you make these things turn is you trail brake them a little bit because they're very light on the front axle. So it drives exactly like a 911 does and looks like the amazing Lego kit.
Thanks again for everyone watching, and don't forget, you can check us out on all our social medias. Thanks guys for joining me again today for our Update 12 stream, which I forgot to mention at the beginning, and we shall see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.
Well, thank you, Karina, and thank you to everybody at Playground Games for that really fun stream last week for Series 12. Now, you saw sort of the highlights of Series 12, but we couldn't resist. I want to check out that Supersonic versus Superfast event. So we're actually going to dive right in and play that event again because it looks so fun. Now, this is actually the second time this event has been remixed here, but this time with a Ferrari, we had to check it out. So this will be coming a little bit later. It's actually one of two showcase remixes coming with Series 12. But this is one of the most fun cars, in my opinion at least, in Forza Horizon 4, and just put it up against the big jet. It's too fun. Let's see how we do here. You saw the folks on the stream talking about the rest of the Series 12 updates. A lot of good stuff coming in Forza Horizon 4 with Series 12, including some reward cars. You got a glimpse at them earlier. A couple of Aston Martins, including the Aston Martin Vanquish, Zagato Coupe, and the DBS Superleggera Super Light. And two Volkswagens as well. The Carmen Ghia, which just happens to be my wife's favorite car of all time, and the two Volkswagens from 1967, the Carmen Ghia and the Type 3 1600L. My wife keeps saying, I need to get her a Carmen Ghia. And I'm like, you realize that car doesn't have power steering, it doesn't have air conditioning, it doesn't. She's like, I don't care, I want it. So one of these days, we're gonna have to get the Carmen Ghia for Mrs. Meckberg. All right. This car, like the last time they did this event, it was with the Countach, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was at night. But this one's back in the daytime with a car that can be a little bit more of a beast than the Countach. I don't call it the super fast for nothing. Let's see what we can do on the relatively straight section here by the lake. When that screen shake comes, it always makes me nervous. Even though I've played this showcase many times. Whenever that screen shake comes, I get nervous. 7 gears on the super fast. You got to make use of all of them. Tight left-hander. Think there's a jump? Yes. Probably could have been timed better. I think the jet's supposed to fly over you as you're doing that. Maybe I'm being a little bit slow here. The other showcase remix, I think they mentioned in the video, oh, not enough brakes, being too tame with the brakes, is the Halo remix with the Warthog, which of course is from the Halo series. And they remixed that again. And I think it's in winter time, so I think you're gonna have to wait for winter for that one to show up. All right, we're getting towards the end here. There's a couple of moments that I need to navigate carefully. Not missing gates. That's an improvement. That's an improvement from my typical Forza performance. I can see the finish line there on the mini-map. Just a few more corners. Another jump. Yeah, that's the moment. That's the moment right there. Nobody does it like PG. It's amazing. All right, final straight. Let's see what we can do. I can hear it. I can see it up there at the upper right. What, about 170? That's what we're looking for. Nice. There you go. There's your look at the latest showcase remix for Forza Horizon 4 as part of the Series 12 update. You guys can play that when it comes available in the game. I think it's next season. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe this Thursday. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. It's going to be a lot of fun to play. There's one other thing that's happening with the Series 12 update, and that's a new barn find. It's the Porsche Lego Speed Champions, let me get this right, the Turbo 3.0 is the new car. You can buy it in stores, you can race it in Forza Horizon 4, but you got to find it first. It's the barn find. Check this out. The LEGO Speed Champions Porsche 3.0 Turbo is available now, both in stores and in the game as a barn find. Hope you guys enjoy that. I am so pleased to welcome back Elliot Lyons to the couch. Welcome back, man. It's great to have you here.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be back on the couch.
Should we talk some Forza RC? It's been a while.
It's been a while, but we got some really cool things to talk about, I think.
So a lot of people in the community actually know who you are. You've been with Forza for a long time. But before, you've sort of switched over the Forza RC team. What does that mean? Like, what are your job responsibilities now?
Wow, that's like a loaded question. You know, I did had some fun time working with the team on Motorsport. At the same time, even you and I, we talked about this before, we're doing some stuff pre-Forza RC team, I guess. Yep. And there was just a great spot for me to move over officially to the Forza RC team and carry forward some of the knowledge I have of the game and put that into our effort going into esports around, you know, just game function, structures, formats, rules, regulations, you know, all the stuff I was doing before.
It seems to be something you really enjoy, you're really passionate about.
Oh, I love all aspects of that. I love the competitive side of it, you know, trying to chase some of the drivers that we have too. And so it's just, I feel it's a great fit for me and a great fit for the team. And then, you know, our team as a whole is doing great work too.
So let's get caught up on where we are with Forza RC right now. If we think about the end of last year, in London, we had the finals. We had a great finals. Lage was our champion. Everybody was celebrating. You guys went straight back to work as soon as the season was done. What were you looking at?
I mean, we're always going back to work and always trying to look towards the next thing. And so when we go back to our home, you know, we love all the great stuff that happened, but we take back the things that we look at. How can we better? What are things that were pain points? What took too long? You know, and then even taking feedback. We always meet with the drivers. You know, we talk, you know, even the community people, we find out, you know, what were some of the things that we know that we can do better. Right. We start looking at those things, and that's how we arrived at a test.
Yeah, the test happened just a few months ago. We're going to talk about that, but let's talk about what were the pain points? What did you guys want to focus on most?
Yeah, so I think everybody would probably agree. The very first thing was adjudication.
Sure.
And for those that don't know what adjudication is, that's basically us enforcing rules while the race is happening.
Yeah.
So if somebody goes off the track or cuts the track or hits a car or takes somebody out, we have a team of people that has to look at that. You guys, Matt and that team talked about a little bit of intent.
Yeah.
So this is the human version of FRR trying to figure out what intent is. And sometimes that takes a long time.
It takes a long time because, as Matt and Chris were talking about, there's so many factors that go into collision between two or more cars, right?
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of us even know these drivers really well by now, and so we can kind of think about what they're trying to do, but we still have a team that has to look at it. And that can take a long time. And so coming out of London, we had a few episodes that were really long, and we just know, not just from a broadcast perspective, but from a driver's perspective, we'll have to fix that.
Yeah.
Things have to be quicker, they have to be cleaner, they have to be more consistent. From a driver's perspective, consistency is key. From each driver to each incident, like we have to have this level of consistency so it's fair for everybody, and everybody can kind of lean into it and know what it is.
Well, that led us, I know there was a lot of planning before we got up to it, but we had this test in Burbank back in May, which doesn't seem so long ago, but there was a lot of work at this test that
Yes.
we sort of took over the studio. We have some footage of it. Maybe you guys can roll that footage. And we have this footage of the studio. We were in a studio. It was kind of black curtains and just getting the job done, but
Yeah.
there was a lot of work happening behind the scenes.
There was a lot of work there, and you know, a test, you test all kinds of things. And we started out the test actually just at our base, which is adjudication, format, and teams. And we'll talk about teams in a minute.
Yep.
And then at the end of the test, we some production stuff, and we have new talent, which
Yep.
is awesome, and they're great. And so that just flowed through the whole week.
A lot of stuff going on. I know you were in the workstation with all the adjudication happening. There's a lot of you guys came up with some great solutions.
I think so. It's always nice when you put some stuff down and you hope it works.
Yeah.
And we learned some stuff as well. We made some changes on the fly as well. But from adjudication, we went from London. I think our longest one was maybe 40 minutes.
Oh, I remember.
It was
I was living it live at that point.
Yes, I think colors were changing and stuff too. I think our longest overage of adjudication was I think almost maybe a minute, and that's just because the teams were messing around.
Post race, right? They were
Post-race.
just kind of screwing around.
Yeah. Otherwise, the rest of the races, they're all done and complete before the race completed. And that's just due to the technology that we brought in to the test to see if it would allowed us to do adjudication on the fly. That was one piece of it. The other piece of it, we'll talk again in a minute about it, was the FRR, which helped out. And all the great work that Matt and team are all doing there. We were able to utilize that for the first time in Forza RC, which just cut a whole bunch out.
Yeah, I want to get that, but what when you say tech, what do you mean? Like this is live video.
So they
reviewing.
have so we have this new computer system, new technology that records all the driver views and allows a separate team of not observers but judges go back and review all of this footage on the fly and make calls as they're going that deal with collisions and how the cars are interacting and trying to figure out that intent and just watching.
Yeah.
There's some other things that are in there too. They're utilizing data out, which is an awesome feature for Forza 7, and they've built some apps around that and getting in data around that.
It makes broadcasting lives easier as well. That data out.
Yeah, I'm being selfish for me.
Yeah, we can all be selfish.
But you're seeing here too. I mean, we have some similar split views and stuff, and people are calling out collisions and stuff. But this system that they've developed, really this quick rewind and quick replay system that records the views has been instrumental. And so much so, and I mentioned this earlier, we were able to recall a penalty in the test.
Did you realize
we realized as we were going back and reviewing, it still wasn't sitting right. And we went back and reviewed it and then actually rescinded it. And we wouldn't have been able to do that before because at the end of the race, we make the calls, we adjust the results, and everything's final.
Yeah.
And what you get is what you get.
I saw a lot of footage of you back there, sort of dealing with the team. And what's your role back there when mid-race?
Right.
What kind of conversations are you having back there?
Sure. So I'm trying to have any conversations.
It was very quiet.
Yes. Yeah, that was a big difference too. It was really quiet, really subdued, but it was nice. Everybody's working heads down, focused. For me, I'm kind of on the turn 10 side, the race director.
Yep.
Our TO has their own race director, and I just interface with them. But if push comes to shove and we have something that's really a close decision or we don't know and all the minds have to get together, then I'll jump in with them and kind of give them some perspectives to think about. And we'll make the call. And actually happened on the one that we rescinded.
Yeah.
I didn't make a call on it, but we all talked and then gave them the info, and they're like, yeah, you know what, that's the right call, and they make it out. So I just kind of sit back and make sure everything's going the way that it should go for a Forza event.
You mentioned the impact of FRR, Forza Race Regulations, was a big help here as well.
Yeah. It's kind of, it has a close place to my heart.
Yeah.
As the guys earlier mentioned, it's something that I helped start, but at a much smaller scale. We were just prototyping and trying some stuff out, but we knew that we had to have it. And that team has just taken it to the moon so far, so that's been awesome, and actually be able to use it now. But for us, for Forza RC, we utilize it to just deal with the off-track and track cutting, which is typically in the past about 60 to 70% of our adjudication time. And we tweaked the rules a little bit at the test, and they've already made some changes since then going into our next season, which will be great.
Because you were hearing feedback from the drivers.
Oh, we're always hearing feedback from the drivers.
But this time it was in person. They were like, hey, this thing that, Elliot, you need to fix this right now.
I think it was cool, though. I mean, that's all part of the test, right? That was the whole point, was to get them in there, put this all in front of them, and say, you know, get live feedback, make changes on the fly, and do it over again. We were throwing a lot of stuff at them. But that was one of the things going into the final day when we did the production test, that we made some tweaks to the system, which is great. You know, we can change it on the server, and we changed some settings. And, you know, what was we have going on the public wasn't quite what was working for professional championship kind of.
Ability levels are different.
Ability levels. So we tweaked some things and then made some more people happier. And we're able to still keep the integrity of the system and then still allow us to keep doing what we're doing.
So if you were a viewer and you had a sort of a sneak peek look at what the test looked like back in May, it would have looked like Forza RC, unlike any Forza RC you've ever seen, because we had drivers there, and they might be familiar faces, but they were competing in a different way. Elliot, this is the first time we had introduced any sort of team functionality or format into the competition here.
Yeah, so Forza's always had teams. We've had these community-based things and organizations and structures, but the game's never really supported teams, or we've never really grabbed hold of teams and made it a thing. This is the first time, so officially we're moving to teams. We have a great handful of teams that we've already put in place. And so roughly a team is made up of 3 drivers and a coach. So for us, while we're working through formats and different things, we're not saying, you know, we don't have them switching off and on, you know, like some traditional motorsports things. They're all racing, but from a coach's perspective, I think that's the most interesting thing to me. There's a lot of strategy that we're going to start pushing in our formats, and a coach is going to be integral to their team succeeding in this next season and going forward into Forza RC.
Each of the coaches, well, we were talking about before the show began, during the week, these guys had to learn how to work with a coach, not only work with themselves as a 3-man team, but work with a coach. And each approached it a bit differently, it seemed like. Yeah,
I mean, for the 4 teams that we had there, it was a great breadth of different styles and drivers and abilities. And so, again, it was an idea. And it was like, hey, this is a thing, and we should do this. And to see it, how it changed, was amazing over the week. So we have coaches are allowed to talk to their drivers during the race. They're allowed to help strategize. You know, adjudication and our head marshals talk to the coaches. So you saw this all unfold and how some teams came in functioning as a team and already kind of had that glue starting to form. We had some teams that thought that they were a team, weren't, but then by the end of the week they were functioning as a team. I don't know, but I think the coolest thing to me was just seeing the different coaches, because we had one that's a professional driver, one that's an ex-pro Forza RC driver, and then we had a couple coaches that were just awesome coaches. And they all had their different styles.
You have your different approaches, whether you're a motivator or an expert, or
some are very vocal. Some were just kind of quiet and just kind of sat back and watched, and then they were just between the races were like putting in what they needed to do.
Well, tell me about the role of the coach in terms of the formats that we did. They have very specific responsibilities in terms of communication.
Yeah, so we're still working through our format for what we're going to do in this next season, but some of the stuff we tested was we needed the teams to build out some cars. Like they had a budget and they could go through and build out how they thought that strategy would unfold over the course of the races. And so you saw just the coaches get in there, pencil and paper, and hunker down and start figuring out the math and what the best builds were. And it's really their job to put their drivers into the cars that benefit the drivers the most. Because some drivers are better at certain cars versus some others. So we saw some teams go for all speed. We saw some teams go for more of a spread the love, so everybody got some.
Everybody got a little something.
Got some builds.
Yep.
Or we had some teams. We played with some stuff too, some rules, but we just saw some teams just really try to just be even keel and just play to their strengths.
And we haven't aligned on formats, but that's the other thing. These teams were dealing with new things they've never had to deal with in Forza before.
Yeah, so ideally the teams will get a little bit more of a head start to build this stuff. But we were throwing things. I was changing things on the fly, probably more than I should have. But that's the environment for it. And they all did awesome. And we got some great stuff. We got some great feedback from them. And it was awesome just to see. And so the whole goal of this, right, is to have this and arm ourselves so that we can put the best season forward. And not just kind of go into it blind. I mean, we were testing Forza regulations for the first time. We were testing teams for the first time. We were testing coaches for the first time. New adjudication for the first time. You don't want to go into the season doing all that.
Yeah. Well, all of that sort of culminates in the fact that a season is coming, and we're getting really close to announcing all of the details for that. That's coming up soon, Elliot, right?
Yes, August 27th, right?
Yep.
So we will have a whole bunch of information around that coming. And hopefully by then you'll know the teams, the drivers, you'll know the formats, maybe the formats, or at least some indication of what they are, and all the dates.
All the dates. So remember, we have that episode of Forza Monthly, 2 in August, one today, of course, and one on August 27th. Elliot will most likely be back talking about all of the information you need to know about the 2019 Forza RC season. Elliot, thank you so much. Great having you here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll talk to you very soon. Listen, now it's time to talk about community photos. You guys make such an incredible effort taking photos every week. We have our photo contest. We chose some of our favorites from the month of July. Check these out. These are amazing. Wow, consistently blown away by you guys every month. An incredible collection of photos. We've got weekly photo contests happening on the forums. If you want to get involved, if you think you've got the skills, head over to forums.forzamotorsport.net and check out those weekly photo contests. We got livery contests. We got all sorts of stuff going on in the forums. So would love to see a contribution of yours in a future episode of Forza Monthly. So get over there and give it your best shot. Let's take a look at the rest of the streaming schedule for today. We are just about to grill Chris Asaki with questions from the community about Forza Motorsport 7, and our friends at Playground answered some questions as well during their last live stream, so we'll get to that in just a bit. And then a look ahead at the August 27th edition of Forza Monthly. We're wrapping up, but not before we get Chris Asaki back on this couch and answer some questions.
Right.
Should we do this?
Let's do this. I love grilling.
You love grilling? Me too. I love grilling.
It's summer, so
it's summertime. Let's grill Chris.
Perfect time to grill.
Let's do it. All right, we got a couple of questions from the forums. The first one is from MB3254. NB asks, Chris Asaki, will the next motorsport game lock cars behind Forzathon and other quote-unquote live services?
Thank you, NB3254. So, all right, I just want to preface a lot of the answers that I'm going to give right now. So I will be talking a lot about what we're intending to do on the next game. There's a ton of design work going on right now. Like I said before, we're in Sprint 2, so there's actually a lot of prototype work going on right now. Stuff that I would love to talk about, but it's a little bit early to talk about some of it. So let me first just, I wanted to preface this with, there are things that I will say that we are looking into, that we are prototyping, that we're investing in, that may never see the light of day. That is an important point here. This is how game development is done. We iterate, we throw some things out, we find some things that are awesome later down the road, and that shows up as a feature. So I just want to be really clear about this. I'm going to be as super open and transparent as possible about the stuff that is going on in the development of the next game without committing to any of them. I want to be really clear about this. If I say, hey, we're not locking cars,
Right.
we might have a decision later on that do lock some cars. Or if I talk about how we are thinking about tuning or upgrading or organizing or racing or anything like that, I just want to be really, really clear with everyone here in the community that these are not commitments to exactly what we are making. I just want to help you understand where we are as a team and as a development team and what we are prototyping and thinking today, which may change because features change over time. We iterate, we get community feedback. And this is one of the things that we're trying to do with both of our feature development and creation, as well as our iteration, is involve the community more. So that's part of this transparency, as it is part of bringing people into the studio and having them experience things and give us feedback in that way. So I just wanted to. It's a long preface.
No, but
there's
just
some
where we
legal
are.
documentation people have to sign away right now. And, no, but seriously, I know we haven't really done this in the past and talk about, we're thinking about these features. So that was just the whole like preamble. Thank
That's
you.
right.
Thank you. So that being said, lock cars in the next game. So one of the things we've been talking about. We have all of these things called big ideas. I think we talked about that in a previous stream. Dan was here talking about our creative process, and big ideas are one of our Turn 10 processes where we talk about very high-level goals around what we want to do in the next thing. They're very high level. They're very conceptual. And one of these things that really have just gained a lot of traction. Forgive the motorsport.
It's inevitable.
That just gained a lot of momentum on the team. Once again, that's another bad one. We all like this thing. The studio likes it. People we've talked to like it. It's a concept under built not bought, and that's what I've coined this kind of phrase is built not bought. And how we think about cars, how we think about the car experience. It's much more. So to put it a little more clearly, a lot of the previous motorsports have been about car acquisition, about getting a car. So hence we've locked cars. That's how we've if you do these things in the game, if you go compete in this event, you might unlock this car. That's really cool. And that's how we've done a lot of our engagement and these type of events. But we asked ourselves kind of questions like, well, what if you had every single car in the game open from day one? Like you don't have to buy it, you just own it, right? What kind of game would we make from that? What kind of experience will come from that? And that's where Built Not Bought started to come out of. So right now, once again, this is not a commitment to this as a feature or even a concept, but what the team really likes about this concept is it gives us a new freedom to think about what cars are in motorsport and the relationship with them. So this question, I'm going on a long-winded answer here. This question about locked cars is actually a fairly existential question for us.
Sure.
Like, is this game about collecting cars? Is it about gaining cars? Or is it about having a more deep, meaningful relationship with a smaller collection of cars? And what does that mean for the player and the player experience? And we're headed down that path right now.
Yeah.
I mean, just full force. The concept art, the designs that we've put in place right now have embraced this notion of built not bought in a way that we've done things in the past that are similar to this. A lot of people point to, we did similar things in FM3 and 4. And I definitely agree. Like there's a lot of that similar spirit in some of these designs that we put forward. So I just want, in a long story short here, locked cars may be a thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because acquiring cars is still important. It's still a progression in the game. But it's less meaningful to us as like the main thing you do in the game. The main thing in this next version right now, we're really invested in making sure players have a deep and meaningful relationship with whatever car they love, right? And that's kind of at the heart of Built Not Bought. So that's spiritually where we're headed right now.
Yeah.
It's really freeing for the team to think of it this way, and it's more natural for well, at least me as a designer, and I'm sure a lot of the players within the studio to think of cars this way, because this is how we approach cars in our everyday life. Like, I love a number of cars, and I want to show that love for cars in a certain way. And I love building cars. I love modifying cars. I've done that pretty much since I was a teenager, right? Like that's just kind of been how I grew up and what I love about cars and the expression that you get from it, the individualism that you get from your ride, right? Like that's a lot about what I want to see in the next experience and where a lot of our designs and discussions are going on right now. So it's a big change for us.
I like the way you frame it as sort of a philosophical approach, because a core decision like that, has repercussions that affect the entire game.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of these identity discussions recently, like who are we, what are our franchise values, and we've had those discussions over the last couple of years, and it's brought us to some really difficult conversations, but also some really deep and meaningful progressive ones about like this next generation of motorsport enthusiasts and motorsport fans. Like, what does that mean for us, and how do we really excite them, and how do we really get them to love the experience and love the cars and love the game the way that we all do, that everyone at Turn 10 does, right? Yeah. So it's a really empowering thing right now. It's actually really exciting.
Something tells me we're going to have a lot more conversations
there's
about this
a lot. I can't wait to actually show you some of the stuff that we're doing, because it is it's awesome.
Well, thank you for a great question. That was a great question. Let's move on to the second question. This is from Shan Roark Dad. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but he asks, would it be possible to allow a friend to sit in the passenger seat of another car while racing online or in multiplayer? That feels pretty like an approach as well. That's learning.
So thank you for the question again. So one of the things we were just talking about big ideas. Actually, one of the big ideas that we put forward in this new thing, outside of the built not bought big idea, was this notion of empowered learning. This is going to be, once again, super abstract and very game designery, so forgive me for like going off on this tangent.
I want some motorsport metaphors in here too. You got to nail them.
Well, where the rubber meets the road.
That's right, yeah.
And the biggest thing around looking at the overall experience for us and thinking about what our value prop is and how we get players to really be more competitive and be a better gamer within the Forza universe, right? There are a lot of things that, as a game designer, and I've made many other games outside of racing games. I've made a lot of racing games, but I've also made a lot of other games. Shooting games, dancing games, singing games, all sorts of games. And there are threads there as a game designer that you take to heart. And one of the things, going back to like a classic Miyamoto style of design, Miyamoto is the guy who did Super Mario Bros. Nintendo, that sort of thing. He did this beautiful thing of introducing concepts to players and then progressively challenging them via level design or enemy or encounter design, all the way up to boss encounters. And it's something that we really haven't thought about how to integrate that experience into Forza. So we've actually taken a long look at that. How to empower learning in our game. How do we empower players to understand the most simple things like acceleration and braking and turning, all the way to things like qualifying and what is practice? Why would you do a practice session? Or what does tire pressure mean? And how does heat impact tire pressure? It's all these super complex concepts that we don't really necessarily think as gameplay, but it is. That's actually what it is. It's gameplay. So what we've been doing over the last, 6 or 8 months, I think, is really understand how to get our slowest players faster. How do they learn? How do they learn how to just even turn the wheel, accelerate and brake and get faster? We look at the leaderboards and understanding where our player base is and how slow or fast the majority of our players are, and how do we get them from being 15 seconds off pace to being 5 seconds off pace, right?
Which is a massive
it's huge, right? And I think I'm fairly quick. I think some of you have seen my terrible driving on a couple of these streams. I'm usually in the top 5, 3, 1% of times online, but I'm still 3 to 5 seconds off the highest pace, the fastest pace, right? That's an eternity in that race, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how to get much faster. I'm basically at my skill limit, my skill cap here. Yeah. So I might find a second or two if I really spend a lot of time, but I'm not getting that much faster. Right. I'm not an F1 driver. That's not my skill or talents in life. But I getting to that space where you're in the top, even 5%, 10%, man, a lot of our players have a long way to go, right? And I think we haven't really done a great job of teaching these core skills and gameplay concepts and introducing players and bringing them through it and challenging them and getting them to master them to the place where they're faster. They're just faster and they drive better and they get more enjoyment out of the game because of that. I strongly believe that our core value as a game isn't coming in first. It's not about like, yeah, we love racing, we love coming in first, but it's about the joy of driving a car, right? Being able to control that car. And when we think about something like, hey, okay, well, maybe we throw a person co-op drive, like absolutely, right? This is core to how we think about how do we get players faster. We're looking at all ways of doing this. We actually had a whole series, a racing series, in our studio where we had team instructors to help players actually get faster. And the whole point of the series wasn't to get to the fastest. It was about how much you improved over that series.
And there was all skill levels.
All skill levels.
Yeah.
People 30 seconds off pace, right? And so when we look at that, and we were just trying to learn how to get players faster. And not just the fastest player faster, because we don't, that's less important to us, right? What's more important is like someone who is 30 seconds off pace, the person who may have never actually driven a car before and is trying to drive the game for the first time, right? Like how do we get them to be competitive? How do we get them to enjoy the game, right? Enjoy the game that we've created, because there's so much to enjoy in there. I love it, but getting into that nougaty goodness, like it's a tough thing. You don't just bite in and go, oh my, this yeah, nougat. There's a long way to get there, and we're just trying to find the right ways, the most elegant ways, the most enjoyable ways that take the best from just overall game design.
Yeah.
And get players into it. So, yes.
Great question.
Once again, great question. Co-op driving and instruction, I mean, we literally have prototyped that in some way, right? Yeah. It's something that we think is a valuable thing, something that connects players to players. So we love it.
Yeah, the goal of it is important. How we get there it may not end up being co-driving, but it's that idea of teaching players.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for that question. That was a great one. Final question for Chris here is from Darth Nint. And he asks, we hear this question a lot month after month. I know you guys are super interested in this, so let's address it. Will the next game have a bigger emphasis on pits, like crew animations, and the ability to make and choose our strategies? I bet Matt Santel has some things to say about that.
I bet he would. I think he would just go on a podium and we're doing this, we're taking that.
Right.
And he is doing that, actually. So pitting strategies, racing, deeper racing strategies, multi-dimensional racing is how I think about it, actually, by the way. Absolutely. So this is part of our DNA, that we're like, we talked about FRR earlier on the show, and where we're trying to take that and what opportunities that brings for us. I tell you, this is a big one for us. Multi-dimensional racing all up, deeper strategy, thinking about more than just the moment-to-moment wheel, rubber meets the road.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I threw that in there.
It's a good one.
Okay, so I had
Evergreen.
Yes, that's a good one. It's super meaningful for us, not just because we want to have deeper strategy in things like our Forza Racing Championships. Like, of course we do, and we're building other structures around that, but when we look at racing, we look at tire strategy, we look at fuel strategy, we even look at battery strategy, because we're thinking about electric racing in the future, right? And what kind of opportunities arise there, right? This is a deep area in motorsport that we're investing in right now, and is something that is part and parcel to what a motorsport game is to us. So once again, I cannot commit to there being pit animations and deeper racing strategy, but this is actually what we're investing in right now. It's super meaningful to us, and it's a big part of how we think the motorsport franchise is moving forward.
It's great to hear. Thank you for that question, Darth Nint. Appreciate that. And thank you, Chris Sasaki. Appreciate your time here on the couch. In addition to Chris answering questions about Forza Motorsport 7, our friends at Playground answered some questions from you, the community, during their last live stream. Karina, take it away.
So join us today as we answer some questions sent in by you, the community. And joined with me on the sofa is none other than Torben and Chris. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Retro.
So why don't we get on to the first question, which is sent in by Absolute Zero. He's asking, is there any plans of bringing in any future cars for Top Gear?
There's nothing we can talk about right now, but it's definitely something that I think we would like to do if it was possible.
Yeah, we've seen the current Top Gear cars have gone down very well, so yeah, we're going to look into that.
But I mean, working with a partner is always interesting because there are lots of different opinions on which cars and how it should be done.
Yeah.
So watch
they
this
have
space,
a lot of
I guess.
interesting cars.
So our next question by Kenworth Chris 770. He would like to know, in addition with Forza Horizon 4, would we potentially be bringing out any more Australian cars, kind of around the 80s, 90s era?
Oh, this is one for you.
Yeah,
this
so
is the first question.
I have a personal passion for this, and I think everyone here at the studio does ever since FH3. So yeah, it's something we do want to bring back to the game. So yeah, watch this space.
So one grumpy uncle asked us a question that with duplicate cars, is there potential that we could either sell them or do something with them? So I know a lot of players out there are currently getting their garages a bit full now and they don't know what to do with their cars.
This is something that we are looking at. I mean, not this specific solution here, but we're aware of the challenges and the ways that people would like to deal with duplicate cars when they get them, but there's nothing specific that we can share. Though as soon as we have something more solid, we'll definitely talk about it on our Discord and on upcoming live streams.
So with our final question by user Racer XN Speed 0Z, he would like to know, is the potential that we could switch vehicles maybe at the beginning of a race, or in between if you end up restarting a race and decide you want to change cars?
So the short answer to that, unfortunately, is no. The point that we do that and the point that the game is built to do that is at the start of the race, before we download all of the cars, before we get it all set up. So that's not something I think that we would be able to do in a good way.
Thanks, guys, for answering those questions. And if you want to send your own in, head on over to the forums and we'll take a look.
Thank you, Retro, and thank you to Playground Games for answering those questions. Like she mentioned, you can ask questions for the next edition of Forza Monthly. We have our Ask Forza shortcut where they're going to bring up the graphic. Go to aka.ms/askforza. That is pointing to the new thread, getting ready for the August 27th show. So if you got a question about Forza Horizon 4, Forza Racing Championship, Forza Motorsport 7, get it in there. We'll choose our favorites, and you might see your question asked on the next edition of Forza Monthly. We're getting towards the end of the show. I have some news I want to make sure you're aware of regarding Forza Motorsport 6. If you missed the week in review last week, we talked about the fact that Forza Motorsport 6 is going to be an August game with gold. Starting on August 15th, you see it right there. You can play Forza Motorsport 6 if you are an Xbox Live Gold member for free. That is an amazing deal. There's also some deals on expansion packs, DLC that you don't want to miss as well. If you haven't played Forza Motorsport 6, it starts on August 16th there. Sorry, I said the 15th. It's actually August 16th and goes to mid-month September. Now, that's the good news. The other half of that news with Forza Motorsport 6 is the fact that once it's out of Game with Gold, once we hit September 15th, Forza Motorsport 6 is entering what we call end of life status. So that means that the game will no longer be for sale. You can still play the game, you can still download it if you've purchased it, but you can no longer purchase the game or its related DLC. So now's your chance. If you haven't played this classic slice of Forza history, go get it starting on August 16th for free if you're an Xbox Live Gold member. And again, on September 15th, it will go into end-of-life status. So wanted to make sure you guys are aware of that. Let's talk about the weekly stream calendar before we end the show. A lot of stuff happening. Shannon McIntosh is going to be right after us here at Forza Monthly. Smack Attacks, she's going to be doing her thing. And you can see the rest of the schedule. Yachts All-Stars, that's Ali Tack's new show. John Iwana is actually on vacation this week, so no Wheel and Pedal Wednesday, but we have Mellish. You guys know Mellish from the Forza Racing Championship, and Ali will be guest hosting his other show. So no WPW on Wednesday, but we've got great fill-in hosts for the rest of the shows. And then I'll be back, of course, on Friday with Dan Greenewalt, creative director for Forza All Up on Forza Friday, so looking forward to that. Thank you, guys. We had a great, hope you enjoyed this show. We had a great time talking to all the guests. Thanks to all the guests who've been here. We'll be back in just 3 short weeks. Now remember, we 2 shows in a month. We haven't done that before, so this is going to be a little bit different. Of course, you heard earlier, we're going to be talking about Series 13 for Forza Horizon 4, and we'll have all the news that you've been wanting for the Forza Racing Championship. We'll have that announcement of the dates of the 2019 season, so you don't want that. All that and more. Can't wait to be back here in just a couple of weeks for the August edition of Forza Monthly. Until then, the August 27th edition, I should say, just 3 weeks away. We'll talk to you very soon. Take care, everybody. See you on the 27th.